Thank you very much, Congressman Perry, for being with us today.
Yes, ma'am. It is a great opportunity. Thank you for your hard work and your courage.
Thank you. Let's talk about your legislation. You recently introduced a piece of legislation that would designate the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization. Tell me about it. What does it entail?
Well, we struggle in America with accountability for China because we believe that the Chinese people are yearning to breathe free, that they are a good people that want to be much like the rest of the free world, but unfortunately they living under the oppression of the Communist Chinese Party, which, because the Chinese Communist Party also rules China, is the governing body in China, has what we call sovereign immunity. So so we cannot hold China, the government of China, accountable for their malign activities towards the West, whether it's election meddling, whether it is sending abundant amounts of fentanyl into the United States, which kill the United States citizens, whether it's espionage towards the United States, or whether it's stealing intellectual property or encouraging the theft of intellectual property. It is very difficult to hold another government accountable. But this government, in a sense, does not rule at the will of the people. It rules by force. It rules by fear. It rules by fiat. And it's no different than the federal government of the United States being able to hold any other criminal organization located in another country responsible for criminal activities. So with that designation, what it would allow for is United States law enforcement agencies, including the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to charge individuals in the Communist Chinese Party for their illegal infractions and activities, and then prosecute them under things like the RICO statutes, the racketeering statutes. So what it seeks to get to is to accountability for the Chinese Communist Party and their criminal activities.
This law will revoke the sovereign immunity of the Chinese Communist Party. Can you give me some examples of how that works? I mean, compared to what was it like before?
Well, so right now, the Communist Party, the Communist Chinese Party, has sovereign immunity because it is the ruler of a country. It's seen essentially as the government, because it is the government of a nation. And because of that sovereign immunity, they can't be prosecuted by somebody like the United States. They might be able to be prosecuted in the World Court. But again, as a member of the World Court, China would lobby and work against that prosecution. And so it seeks to separate the Communist Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party, as a criminal organization. It also, by the way, of course, as we know, does rule and does govern China. But just because it's a governing body doesn't mean it should be absolved of criminal activity. And so, again, because the Chinese Communist Party, for instance, encourages the theft of intellectual property in the United States, and not only encourages it, but pays for it and sanctions it and administers it, and has actually a law on the books requiring it from its people that live and work abroad for these companies, that would be deemed criminal activity by any other organization other than a governing body. So this seeks to separate the Chinese Communist Party's sovereign immunity as a governing body and label them what they are, which is also a transnational criminal organization. It is true that they are a governing body, but there have been other governing bodies around the world that have done horrific things to their populations, to the people they have ruled over, and there have been some remedies. Unfortunately, the remedy oftentimes is war. The United States does not seek war with China and does not seek war with the Chinese Communist Party, but it does seek some type of accountability for the malign activity that the Communist Party has undertaken over many decades, is operating within right now, and this is the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Can you break down what it means for the 90 million Chinese Communist Party members in China, and especially for those who are in the United States,
yes.
who are residents?
So what it means, if this bill were to be passed and signed into law, it means that any criminal activity that the millions of communist members of the Chinese Communist Party, if you're a member of the Communist Party in China and you are involved in criminal activity of any kind, and the United States of America, again, this would be, if this were signed into law, this is my proposal at this time, and I hope it is signed into law, by the way, that the United States could then prosecute you in a court of law and penalties, whether that's fine, whether that's incarceration, the normal panoply of penalties that come with the United States judicial system would apply to you. So if you are here in the United States working on a student visa and you are conducting espionage against the United States government, if you are conducting intellectual property theft from your employer or sponsor, or if you are somehow involved in any criminal activity, even though you are working for the Chinese Communist Party, you would not be absolved of responsibility. You would not be immune to the long arm of the law and the justice that comes with that.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think if a person from China who is a Communist Party member committed some kind of crime in America, I mean, he will be prosecuted no matter whether he's a Communist Party member or not. So what does this law do to people like that? I mean, what's the difference? Does it mean more draconian measures would be put on those who committed crimes in the U.S. and they would not be able to have the blanket of the Communist Party to blame on? What does it mean specifically?
It's mostly, certainly you're right, Simone. If someone that is residing in the United States commits some horrific crime, or any crime, quite honestly, they are bound by the laws of the United States while they are present in this country. But however, there are individuals that are here with diplomatic immunity from China, and because they work for the Chinese government and at the same time the Chinese Communist Party, so they unfortunately can engage in illegal activity and have immunity from prosecution because of their relationship with the the Chinese Communist Party. We seek to strip that immunity, that absolution of responsibility for criminal activity, simply because you are. What we're saying is you're involved in a criminal enterprise. That criminal enterprise does happen, by the way, to govern the nation of China. But just because it governs the nation of China doesn't mean that you're not going to be held accountable for criminal activity, and you will not be able to rely on diplomatic immunity for your criminal activity towards the United States of America.
So you would say this legislation, if passed, will have bigger impact on Chinese diplomats, Chinese high-ranking officials?
Right now Chinese diplomats are completely absolved of prosecution. The only thing that the United States of America can do is to return them to China, but they cannot prosecute them. That's crazy. That's crazy. You have criminals within your midst trying to subvert your democracy, to subvert our country, destroy our government, and all we can do is say, go back to where you came from and not prosecute them. This bill, among other things, will let them know that you're not going to come to America. We're not going to assist you. The government of the United States of America and the taxpayers of the United States of America are not going to assist you in your malign activities and your criminal activities towards the country that is hosting you.
Okay. Do you foresee if this law is passed, if this legislation is passed, there will be more draconian measures on Chinese Communist Party members in the U.S.? I know the U.S. CIS already has a regulation come out, like the Chinese Communist Party members cannot emigrate to the U.S. Do you think a similar policies will be issued under the spirit of this law if passed?
I can't predict what policies will, if any policies or further policy will emanate from this. I think that that the United States of America, and quite honestly, the world has been awakened to the malign activities of the Chinese Communist Party through the pandemic that has spread around the world in the last 8 months. And we're seeing the Communist Party for who it is. And I think that most governments and most individuals separate the people of China from members of the Chinese Communist Party, but they do see the Chinese Communist Party as a malign actor, as a criminal enterprise, and they want to be able to deal with it. It is long overdue. The time has long since passed where the United States in particular and the world in general must deal with a criminal organization which has the force of billions of people behind it, and a nation state as a refuge from their criminal activity. It must be dealt with, and we have to get serious about it, as uncomfortable as it may be. And this is one of the steps along the way. You simply cannot abide. You would not abide in your neighborhood. That's what we're talking about. If you look at the world as a neighborhood, you would not let your neighbor down the street conduct criminal activities over and over again that were poisoning your neighborhood with drugs, that were stealing your property, your hard-earned property, and were violating the human rights of your neighbors by imprisoning them with extrajudicial activities, potentially, as the report, as you know, says, harvesting their organs because of their political beliefs. You would not put up with that in your neighborhood, yet we are in the larger neighborhood of the world, and we simply I think that most of the world has recognized it and is now taking dramatic steps to change course to not allow that to continue any further. This is one of the steps along that continuum.
Mm-hmm. This question is for a lot of Chinese people living in America. So do you think this law will have impact on, for example, a Chinese person lied about their Chinese Communist Party identity when they entered the U.S. Do you think this law, under the spirit of this law, they will be held accountable in the future?
If this law were to pass and you came to the country without the United States of America knowing, because you did not divulge that you were a member of the Chinese Communist Party, I think that would open up people to in that circumstance to prosecution. We want lawful, honest people to come to the United States. We want them to come legally and prosper and be the part of the fabric of America and move our country and freedoms forward. But we cannot accept people with malign activities to come to America, or to come to America with the best of intentions and then change their mind and work under the guise of the Communist Party to undermine our freedoms and the promise of America. And so this bill, which I hope becomes law, is designed to deal with those circumstances so that there is accountability for criminal activity associated with a criminal organization against the United States of America and the people of the United States of America.
How does it, this is a very practical question. For example, this a Chinese Communist Party member. He wants to quit the party and enter America. Does the American government recognize any institutions or any way for people like that to quit the party and become clean?
Well, certainly America has always and continues to this moment, and I think in the future certainly will continue to accept asylees, people that are under persecution of their government. And I suspect as a member of the Communist Party of China, once you renounce the Communist Party and start taking actions in that regard, so that would include things like talking to U.S. intelligence officials about what your job was within the party, what the Communist Party's activities are in regard to the rest of the world, or the United States in particular. Once you do that, the United States is going to want to provide a safe haven for you and protection. However, we are not going to allow the Communist Party. We don't allow it now, and we should not allow it in the future, and we should actually be much more strident. We are not going to allow the Communist Party free reign, an open door to come into the United States of America and try and co-opt our government and destroy our government to take it over, and for the citizens of the United States, or the world for that matter, to live under the totalitarian, jackbooted thug rule of what I call a thugocracy. This is a criminal organization. We're simply not going to abide it. We're going to be willing to help anybody that is interested in leaving it, but we're obviously going to have to confirm that. And there, unfortunately, are going to be people that are disingenuous, that are going to say that they seek to leave the Communist Chinese Party to get the favor of the United States of America, and then without the, insincerely use the good graces of the United States of America against us. And we're going to be, as we always have been, on the lookout for that kind of activity as well.
So they need to show solid actions before they can.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the Communist Party is an untrustworthy organization. It is a criminal organization. You wouldn't trust a thief in your home. You wouldn't trust a murderer in your home just because they said, well, I'm not going to steal your stuff. I'm not going to murder your family. You wouldn't trust them. Why would you trust anybody else that's involved in a criminal enterprise that is literally conducting those same activities as we speak? So the United States has a saying which we like to live by. We want to trust everybody, but we verify. Trust but verify.
Right. There are a lot going on today regarding U.S.-China relations. So how do you foresee the U.S.-China relations going forward? Do you think a decoupling is inevitable?
I don't think it's inevitable, but I do think that it's a strong possibility as long as the Communist Party continues its actions and its rhetoric on the present course. So it's the military actions in the South China Sea, its activities towards its neighbors in the region, whether that's India, whether that's Japan, Vietnam, all those things play into it. And of course, the activities towards the United States in particular, meddling in the United States elections, and picking winners and losers in that regard, so that they pick the side that's going to best support the Communist Party's activities. And of course, the things I've already talked about, $300 to $600 billion annually in sanctioned intellectual property theft, the loading up of our borders into the United States of America of fentanyl, which kills our American population and costs us the loss of our family members, and untold law enforcement activities associated with the drug culture and the drug trade in the United States of America. The espionage conducted against America and the theft of our military assets and plans and technology. We just simply cannot and will not put up with that any longer.
Congressman, last question. After President Trump contracted COVID-19, do you sense any atmosphere change in the D.C.? Has it rallied the Republicans, or what has it done?
Well, among other things, look, it hasn't changed much in Washington, D.C. That is a city that is run by leftists, that has been closed down effectively to commerce and to free living under the pandemic rules of the mayor there. And so it hasn't really changed much there. What I think it has done is shown that a man that is in his 70s, is in the range of the population that is vulnerable for this within days, because of the United States healthcare system, can not only beat this virus, but could come out maybe even stronger than prior to the virus. And it gives us hope as Americans in our abilities to conquer the virus that came from China. In my opinion, was constructed in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and then was spread around the world either by accident or on purpose. And if it was by accident, was disregarded by the Communist Party because they didn't want to be held responsible for their activities. And I think it shows America and the rest of the world that we can beat this and continue to be free. And I think it's a great sign for humanity about our abilities to fight not only this virus such that it is, but to fight our malign actors, including the Communist Chinese Party, who, whether by accident, by happenstance, or by design, are monitoring what how we respond to this, and to know that we can beat even their biological weapons if that's what they seek to produce and foist not only upon the United States of America, but on the rest of the world.
And President Trump is testing negative now. Yeah,
yes.
Right.
Literally days after contracting it, they instituted an abundance of caution just to make sure that they monitored him correctly in a location where they could provide the services. So they asked him to go to the hospital. He went there so that he could do that, but walked out, on the other side of it within days, and is out vibrantly on the campaign trail. That should give every American hope that we can get back to work, we can get back to school, we can get back to our daily lives, and that therapeutics, vaccines, and the cure is on the way.
Amazing. All right,
Yes.
Congressman, these are all my questions. Do you have anything else to add?
No, well, I would just say this. It is, again, high time, long overdue, that the free world recognizes, acknowledges, and starts dealing effectively with the Communist Chinese Party, who wishes not only to dominate the United States of America, but in the entire world. And if you don't want to live under a system of oppression, of communist totalitarian oppression, it is time to take tangible actions to deal with the Communist Chinese Party. That's what my legislation seeks to do. I would ask every person that's watching this in the United States of America, or that knows somebody in the United States of America, call your member of Congress. Have your friends call their members of Congress and ask them to sign on this bill, so that we can co-sponsor this bill, so that we can build an overwhelming level of support, so that we can move this bill forward in the Congress, get it into the Senate, and get a signature by the President of the United States of America, and start holding the criminal organization that is the Communist Party accountable.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Stay safe.
Yes, you too.